Hello there, sword friends. This is going to be a chat about the sword experience. It's not a sword in my conventional review, but it is a sword-related topic, and I'm a super nerd for the Highlander, or at least a nerd for the Highlander. So I thought I would talk about the experience because there are some videos out there about it, but not necessarily in the format or context I can provide as a random participant of the sword experience. So to elaborate, the Sword Experience is an event hosted by Adrian Paul. Adrian Paul was the actor that played the Highlander in the TV show in the 90s, The Highlander. You probably know who Adrian Paul is. I don't have to elaborate too much on that, but he offers something called the Sword Experience, where he will teach you movie choreography from some type of movie, and they do it in different places all around the country, all around the world, frankly. And this is the second time that the Sword Experience has been in my area, Minneapolis, but the first time I attended. The first time I came through, I thought long and hard about it, but I was like, it's a lot of money to go learn how to do movie choreography, which isn't really my personal interest, I suppose I would say. But in any respect, the nerdism got to me, and I was like, I get to, well, you only live once. $300 was the price, roughly, for the base level sword experience. There are more expensive options that give you more tchotchkes and other things, but effectively you get the same experience. You just get more bling for your dollar. So I'm going to talk about it from the $300 perspective and what you get and what the event was like. So the first thing, at about 8:30, we started in the morning, of course. Started registration. It was held at Normandale Community College in Minneapolis, or the Bloomington area if you want to be specific. Normandale Community College is a really nice Japanese garden, which I'll talk a little bit about later in this video. But we started in this large grass lawn area. We did some introductions, and the first thing I want to point out is Adrian was very specific about this not being martial arts or swordsmanship. It's movie choreography, and there are very different intents there. One is to sell it, to look good, to protect your partner, to be a good partner, to keep them safe, while simultaneously kind of selling the choreography that you're taught. And swordsmanship is kill the other guy really as quick as possible without getting killed yourself. So they're very different missions, and he made that clear. I'm not sure if everyone really got that message in the Sword Experience, but he did make it abundantly clear very early on, and I give a tip of my hat for that. It was sold as movie choreography, and that's what we did. Adrian divided people up. You worked with a partner, and for the purposes of choreography, you get in. I got to divide into group A and B, basically. You're working in a pair. One person learns their side of choreography. The next person learns their side of choreography, and then you kind of partner together. So you start with a warm-up. You get paired together based on size. I was actually working with somebody that I knew from my dojo, but at the same time, we didn't get paired because we knew each other. We got paired because we were of similar size. So anyway, you start doing a warm-up. He goes through and does some sword drills on just how to move the bowkin, how to start, how to stop, where to aim. Some simple stuff that if you've been in a martial arts class is pretty much day one or week one or month one type stuff. Then you moved on to kind of working with your partner just a little bit, moving back and forth, getting a feel for some of the back and forth motion. And then you divide up and learn the choreography from various people. Now, Adrian took one group and a helper took another group. I was in the group with the helper, but Adrian would still bounce around and try to, effectively do corrections and this and that. Though I think he got a little more one-on-one time with the group that he was specifically mentoring versus the group that I was in, which had the helper, who did a great job, but was not the Highlander. So in any respect, then you learn your choreography. While we were learning the choreography, though, it rained a lot. So on the grassy knoll, I was noticing pretty quickly that just working on some kata in my backyard is not the same as working with another person or trying to move around as much. And I did get like a tactile sensation of how different it was to move on a different format, and very quickly realized that I'm always doing kata on a dojo floor, whether it be hardwood or, the pretend plastic tatami mats or something, but I'm always doing it on a floor, padded or not padded. I'm always on like a flat open space. So being on a kind of semi-flat and kind of wet open space was different. And because it started raining, we took that group and moved into a parking structure. Now this is one note of a divide in my personal thoughts of happiness, if you will. So as a customer, it started raining, rain was in the forecast, and there wasn't really a plan other than moving to a parking structure, which was still wet and also being power washed. So it was really loud and you couldn't really hear much. Well, there was a big empty community college, which is actually really quite large, and had a gymnasium very close that was empty and I'm assuming available. So we didn't go into the warm, dry, open gymnasium that we were all used to probably working in. We went into a parking structure. So as a customer, I was a little disappointed in that. As a practitioner, though, I took more away from it because, again, the parking structure is at a camp, so you're not working on level ground. You're on concrete versus grass, or really, I haven't swung a sword much on concrete before. And there are literal oil spills on the ground, and the paint that separates the parking spaces. All of those were kind of obstacles or, kind of booby traps for your feet, and you would slip. And that gave me a very different sensation moving around. But you work through the kata. You pair up with your partner, and you get a feel for working with your partner in kind of a slow, controlled environment. And after we practiced in the parking structure, and bear in mind that while we're doing this practice, Adrian is bouncing around helping, and I suppose this would be the point where Adrian is training you. He had really good command over the room, and I would say that Adrian is a better teacher than he is an actor, and that's not a dig on Adrian as an actor or his aptitude. It's really that he's a very effective teacher. I thought he did a great job. I've been to a few different martial arts seminars in my time, and to keep command of such a large group and kind of wrangling the cats, if you will, I think he did a really, really good job of taking people from a very wide degree of skill set and executing on being able to do something at the end. And I felt like he had pretty good control of the room and was very effective as a teacher. The thing is that you pay a lot of money to have kind of one-on-one interaction with the guy, and I didn't feel like I felt like I had moments of interaction, but I didn't feel like I had like minutes of interaction, if you will. So he would come by, he would do a correction, he would show you. He's a very effective teacher, but it was very much like a martial arts seminar. He didn't spend 10 minutes talking to me or working with me specifically, but he did spend the moments necessary to work around the room, and I felt like he did a pretty good job at that, though it would have maybe been nice. Though I don't know that I could necessarily expect that. He was doling out his time pretty evenly across the room. At least it felt that way to me. Then we moved on from the parking structure after everyone kind of had a feel for the kata, though it didn't really feel like we knew what we were doing to sell it, I imagine, with such a limited time, even though it's not really that limited. Starting at like 9 and then beginning the kind of show me what you learned at 1 is not really a short amount of time, but it did feel like it moved really quickly. Despite the rain and obstacles, it felt like it actually moved really, really quick. We then moved to the Japanese garden. Now, Normandale Community College has a Japanese garden, which is a site if you are in the nearby area. It's certainly worth stopping by and seeing for sure. It's very picturesque. It's small, the footage maybe makes it look really large. It's a pretty small garden, but it's certainly worth a walk through. It's a great place to hang out. I remember some fun times at that Japanese garden. Adrian then sends you to different strategic spots with your partner. I got put on the bridge area with my partner, and this is a little different. So I was working in a wide open field. I was working in a wide open parking lot on a cant. But now I'm in the rain on a bridge with wood slats for the ground and metal beams on the side of me, so I can't move around the same way that I had been training. And it was, again, from a martial context, something I didn't expect to benefit from, but I really took a lot away from the surrounding area. So you learn effectively a kata, and if you learned a kata before, a paired kata, then it felt very similar. It didn't have the same kind of martial moves or the same intent behind it, but it did feel very much like a kata. And now I'm in a different area in the rain on a slippery floor with steel beams on the side of me, thinking about how to do and execute that same kata, and also thinking about how to sell it and look good, which is not something I'm typically doing. And it was actually really interesting from a martial aspect, and that's what would make me say this, if you're a martial artist and not necessarily interested in movie choreography, would give me some, it's not always going to rain and you're not always going to be on a bridge, but it did give me some things to think about, and I'm not very thoughtful, I suppose I would say. It takes a lot for things to register as a lesson, and I got beaten in the face with this, and I'm really glad I did. It was beneficial. In any respect, people are all over this Japanese garden, and they're filming, and he's constantly saying cut, and you reposition and start over again, and he starts again, and you're trying to sell it, and then he stops and starts and stops and starts and stops, and it gives you an idea of how the sausage is made in those favorite movies you have. It's less glamorous, but it was still actually really fun. You're working with your partner, and you're trying to sell it. Towards the end, in some of these photos that were taken, which I suppose this actually goes into the other bit. So you learn this thing, you do this kata, you do it in a picturesque place, but what other bits do you get for $300? Not that you necessarily need to get other bits, but one thing is, as they're going through, there is a professional photographer that's going through, and when some of them are processed, you will get a link to this thing. So here we are on the lawn, and here we are in the parking lot, and then here we are in the garden. And so towards the end, Adrian came by, and me and my partner on the bridge got to do the end shot, and he was trying to film it. Didn't actually end up in the footage of the video he sent out, but that is the other thing. On YouTube, he posted a video of the stuff that we were doing. And by stuff that we were doing, I mean he posts a video and tries to make everyone, look cool doing stuff. And that's a interesting kind of different way to, I mean, basically you get you spend $300, or at least I did. You get to learn some kata, you get some one-on-one time swinging a bokken around with a Highlander, and then you have professional photos and you have a video taken of the event. So, I mean, realistically, that's nothing to balk at. A videographer, somebody making even a 3-minute video like this was of the experience, trying to make you look cool, is quite a bit for $300. I've definitely had other people come in, provide martial arts seminars, spent more than $300 and got less one-on-one time and no professional photos or video taken at the end. But there are some other bits. One is you get a bokken. So we had a red bokken, black bokken, and this designated the A and B sides, if you will. And at the end, he signs it. This is the black bokken, one that my partner got me because he crushed my finger pretty good in the process of being my partner. But notice that it has some ito on it, and Adrian noted that the ito will come loose if you grip it too hard. I would say this is just loose in general and will come loose because it is loose. It's not the best bokken in terms of ito, but it did hold up to lots and lots of being whacked into things, and seems, not like a bokken I would personally want to use. It's a little on the heavy side, but it's not bad, and it's a memorable experience. Adrian then signs it. He didn't sign this one. This one was an extra. You don't get 2 bokken. You only get 1. But he did sign it, and he signs it Minneapolis, and you get a signed bokken that reminds you of the experience. Additionally, you get a certificate that says you completed the event, and Adrian Paul signs this, and you get your name signed on a certificate that says you did the sword experience. And lastly, you get a signed photo of Adrian Paul, which would be provided. I opted not to have a signed photo of Adrian Paul. He will sign something else, or you can pay for more things to be signed. It was like $30 to have him sign something, but he would sign a photo, which was provided in the cost of the event, or some other piece of memorabilia. A lot of people had him sign a Highlander sword. I, too, brought a Highlander sword. You could throw a rock and hit 5 people that had a Highlander sword. But in a nutshell, this is a Point Gallery sword, and I have the certificate of authenticity from the Point Gallery sword, and Adrian kind of signed it down here at the bottom. So I have the certificate of authenticity with Adrian Paul's signature on it, and this is the sword from Point Gallery. It's a live blade. It's not one of the normal ones. It was one with an older Chris cutlery blade. Not that that necessarily means much to too many people, but suffice to say this is a pretty expensive iteration of the Highlander sword. The other bit to note is that Adrian actually held this sword, and I said, hey, would you take a picture? He'll basically, if you look at these photos down here, he'll take a picture with you. That's another part of it, is you get a personal photo taken with Adrian Paul. I had him take a photo with me and this sword, which I am holding right now, the Point Gallery sword. I'm not entirely sure if he was sure it was a live sharp blade or not. I think based on my caution taking it around people, he probably knew, but he actually held it not. It felt pretty close to my throat right here, and I made a goofy face because he's holding it not to my throat, but awfully close for a Shenken and a person that I don't know. Granted, he's a star. That would be quite a taboo situation if he were to accidentally cut me, and I asked him to, but nevertheless, it made me nervous for a second. He seemed in good control, though. It was all in good fun. But you get this cool photo, and he took a photo of me with this Highlander sword. So he actually held this particular one and signed the certificate of authenticity, and that's what I had him do. He would sign other things if that was something you wanted him to do. And if you spent more on the sword experience, you would get a more elaborate bokken with a different handle and was better made, or other memorabilia, and they had shirts and things like that for sale. But in a nutshell, I'm kind of talking about the $300 experience I had, which wasn't really a different experience than spending $400 or $500 in the experience. You just got more stuff, which was probably worth it. It was nice stuff, but not necessarily things that I needed. So if I talk about what you get, you spent $300, you got several hours of entertainment, exercise, and you got professional photography going on throughout the event, some of which hopefully it makes you look better than you should. Then you get a professional video made. It's not a particularly long video, but Adrian, I'm not sure who edits the video. They had a videographer. I'm not sure who was doing the editing, but you get a video made of the event. You get a bokken to use in the event, which is then signed by Adrian as a memorable event thing. You get a certificate, which is signed. You get then another photo or another piece of memorabilia signed, and a personal photo with Adrian, and you spend a lot of time doing stuff. So for $300, I thought it was actually, it's expensive, But it's honestly, you get a lot in that. Compared, I mean, I'm just comparing it to other seminars from a martial arts. Now, I know this isn't a martial arts perspective, but Adrian spent a lot of time swinging a stick around or a sword around in the movies, and I would assume has a lot of experience swinging a sword around in the context of theatrical swordsmanship or sword choreography. And from that respect, you're learning from somebody that knows what they're doing in that vein. I'm sure he's also a martial artist and has a background in it, but the point was to convey his expertise and impart his knowledge in the category of movie choreography and swordsmanship in that respect. So if I think about, you know, kind of a well-known person giving a seminar in martial arts, I've paid more for seminars and not had any of the other benefits other than the some time with the person giving the seminar. So I think you actually get quite a lot for the money. It is a lot, but I'm certainly not going to regret it. The thing I'll say is I took more away from it than I really expected from a martial capacity, and a lot of that was just doing it in a weird place, trying to do kata and slipping on things, and you know, what you're familiar with and how to move kind of shines through, and you realize, like, you know, when I move my hip or my foot or do this thing that I'm used to doing and there's oil there or paint or I'm off, you know, I'm on uneven ground, it really taxes you in weird ways and it feels different. I would say I just took a lot from a martial perspective in terms of a thought experiment and some experience in that way that I didn't expect. And the event was pretty fun. It moved by really quick. I met some cool people. It was a real fun time. So I certainly don't regret it. I don't know that I would do it again. Not to say I've mastered theatrical swordsmanship by any stretch of the imagination, but I think I got enough of my nerd out. And while I had fun and I'd recommend it, at the same time, I don't know that I would return to the sword experience. But that's just because I had fun. It was a cool thing to do. That said, you know, sometimes they're in different events, and the location sometimes can be a sales or a reason to go in and of themselves. So some of them are in like Belize and in cool castles, and there's a lot of interesting stuff. In any respect, if the sword experience comes to your neighborhood and you have a little bit of a nerd boner for the Highlander and that was a fun thing for you, or even if you're just interested in theatrical swordsmanship, or even if you're just a martial artist and you have some disposable income and you're not at all interested in the Highlander, I think there's perhaps benefits and some worthwhile considerations to attend the event for any of those folks. So that I'm going to stop rambling. That's my thoughts on the sword experience. It was very good. I recommend you do it, and that's all I've got for you. As always, cheers and thanks for watching.